A very brief intro to Simon. So Simon is a principal business analyst with 16 years experience in helping deliver change initiatives from the very big to the very small and everything in between. But I won't say any more. So with a presentation entitled Fear Kills More Dreams Than Failure Ever Will, How to Become a Braver Business Analyst. Simon, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So the first step, let's check you can see my screen.
We're all good, Simon. We're all good.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Really appreciate the introduction, Adrian. And again, thank you for inviting me on. And thank you to everybody that's joined. I appreciate life is very, very busy and there's probably a whole bunch of other things you could be doing. But to come and listen to me today, it means a lot to me and I genuinely appreciate it. And I hope that you get something for the next hour or so. So as Adrian mentioned, this is an abridged or a version of my presentation that I gave at the European Business Analysis Conference in September last year. And it's around this concept that fear can kill more dreams than failure itself ever will do. And specifically, how to become a braver business analyst. And I'm going to do that by sharing some ideas, some tools, some tips and some techniques. But hopefully how I'll bring that all together is with some real world experience. Specifically, for about 6 months last year, I very deliberately, very consciously put myself in difficult and uncomfortable positions outside of my comfort zone to see how I might grow and develop as a person and by proxy as a business analyst. It's what I called my comfort zone challenge. And I'll share some of those with you and what I kind of learned from putting myself through that experience. As Adrian mentioned, so my name is Simon Platt. I've been a business analyst of one description or another for about 17 years. Presently, I'm a principal business analyst at Whitbread, who is a UK-based company and the parent company of some well-known and much-loved brands such as Premier Inn, Beefeater, Brewers Fayre, etc. Now, the good news is I've probably got about 30 to 35 minutes worth of content. We'll have plenty of time, hopefully, for some Q&A at the end. But the good news is it's not my intention just to sit here and talk at you for the next 30, 35 minutes. And there'll be several opportunities throughout the talk for you to participate as well. And we'll do that using a tool called Menti. A couple of things to note, you don't need to worry about it now. I'll clearly signpost it throughout the presentation. All you need is some kind of internet-enabled device to take part and join in the poll. The only caveat is my personal budget doesn't extend to a professional license, so I'm using a free version, which means that only allows for 50 people. So unfortunately, if you're number 51, 52, 53, you won't be able to join in, but hopefully you'll still get value from the engagement regardless. So let's get into it. I alluded to, at a very high level, this idea of a comfort zone. I want to say right off the bat, right off the beginning, is that comfort zones are very personal and they're very unique to each of us. No one person's comfort zone is the same as somebody else, and we'll explore that concept throughout the course of the presentation. But we're all probably familiar with what a comfort zone is. It's that place inside of ourselves where we feel safe, we feel secure, and we feel in control in a given situation. That could be physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, any combination thereof. But it's very personal to us, and it's where we feel safe and we feel secure and we feel in control in a given situation. Now, typically, when we step outside of our comfort zone, this is where we begin to learn. We might learn new tools. We might learn new techniques. We might learn new skills. We might learn about new technologies. We might learn something about our business, our organization that we didn't previously know. We might learn something about the sector or the industry that we work in. We may learn something about ourselves. We may learn something about ourselves and how we like to work and how we get the best out of ourselves as individuals. We may learn something about our colleagues, the people we work with on a day-to-day basis that improves our working relationship with them. And when we really step outside of our comfort zone, when we really push ourselves, this is where we grow. So as business analysts, we may go from being a business analyst to a senior or a principal or a manager We may become line managers. We may become coaches. We may become mentors. We may become assessors, examiners. We may take a leap of faith and go from being a permanent to a contractor or a consultant or setting up our own business. But typically, the further from our comfort zone that we step, the more we grow, the more we learn, the more we develop as individuals. Now, often, not always, but often, when we step outside of our comfort zone, we have to face up to an element of fear. And that could be a lack of self-belief. We may lack belief or confidence in ourselves to do or to achieve the thing that we set out to do. It could be that we give ourselves excuses. It's too hard, it's too difficult, it's going to take too long, I'm never going to accomplish it, so why should I even start in the first place? We give ourselves excuses not to do something because we're afraid of failing. And it could be, and I've been affected by this throughout my career, certainly in my earlier parts of my career, we could be unduly affected by the opinions of other people or what we perceive to be their opinions of us. So we may put too much weight, too much emphasis on what other people think, and therefore we end up putting the worst type of limitations, which are self-imposed limitations. We limit ourselves because we're too worried about what other people might think of us, and we constrain ourselves. And it's worth saying that fear is okay. Fear is part of our evolution as a species. It's what helps inform our decision-making process. It's what helps inform our flight, our fright, or our freeze response. But what exactly is fear? Lots of definitions, but one that I particularly like is fear is that bad feeling that you have when you're in danger, when something bad might happen, or when a particular thing frightens you. Now, I would hope that as business analysts, we're not faced with danger in our day-to-day professional lives. But we may know people that are faced with danger. We may have friends or families that are deployed in armed services, or the police service, or the fire service, or the health service, where danger is an inherent part of their everyday lives. But I suspect, and I would challenge everybody here to think about this, I suspect that in our working lives, everybody can think of an example, whether it's recent or in the past, we're in the workplace, we've been faced with a situation that frightens us, that worries us, that scares us, that makes us anxious. It could be, as a business analyst, it could be the first time you're ever asked to facilitate a workshop. I remember the first workshop I ever facilitated on my own. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. It could be that we have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, and that conversation worries us. It could be a conversation with a peer, with a direct report, with a line manager, with a difficult stakeholder, or a stakeholder in general, and that conversation worries us. Again, it's perfectly natural, but it's just something to kind of be aware of. And leading up to the Business Analyst Conference, and even today, as I kind of prepared for this webinar this evening, I have fears. I had fears when I presented at the conference, and I've got fears and worries now as I sit here talking to you. First and foremost, worried that nobody shows up. So thank you for everybody that has generally taken the time out of the day to come and listen. I worry, I have fears that people will think I'm a fraud. To what extent, to what authority do I have to sit here now and talk to you about being brave and bold? And I'm worried that people will think I'm a fraud. You worry that people will look bored, become disengaged, they may get up and leave. I'm worried that on my next slide, the video that I've got prepared may not work. I may have a technical problem. I'm worried that when we come to use Menti, it may not work. Less so now sitting here on the other end of a webinar, but certainly when I present in person, I'm worried that I might shake, that I might start to sweat because I'm nervous. And that's happened to me in the past when I first sort of stepped into presentation. It's why typically I always wear black. It's my kind of comfort zone blanket. I'm worried that I might overshare. I might get too comfortable, I might get too confident and overshare and say something that I didn't mean to and that I sort of subsequently regret saying. I'm worried we get to the Q&A and I get grilled, that you ask me questions I cannot answer and I find difficult to answer. The flip side of that, there is nothing worse as a presenter, but we get to the Q&A and there are no questions. It's just tumbleweed. So every one of these are legitimate fears and worries that I have whenever I present, when I presented at a conference, when I presented in preparation for it, and even now sitting here now presenting. What I've come to realize is is these aren't actually fears. What they are is excuses. Every one of these is an excuse I was giving myself not to do something because I was afraid of it. And I could have taken any one of these excuses and said, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm too scared. I'm too fearful. I'm not going to do it. And I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on what may go wrong, the worst case scenario, rather than focus on the positives of what will happen if it doesn't. So for example, let's say I have a technical problem, that the video that I've got lined up on the next slide doesn't work. Let's be honest. So what? It's not the end of the world. It's a 40-second video, a little bit of light-hearted humor. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. And I'm sure as an audience, you will have empathy for me that with best endeavors, it just didn't work. And we'll move on and we'll find a way around it. Maybe if I get nervous when I present and stumble over a few words, again, we're all humans. We want the best for each other. So sometimes we put too much emphasis on the worst case scenario. We catastrophize what could go wrong and allow it to distract us from the positives of actually doing that thing that we are fearful of. And to exaggerate a point, I guess, to make a point, I'm going to play a short video around catastrophizing. It's 40 seconds, a little bit of fun. But like I say, it's just going to exaggerate a point to make a point about sometimes what is the worst that could really happen. So I hope that works. And judging by a few emojis popping up, I'll take it it did. So that fear of technical failure is behind me. So fantastic. One of the other things about failure is that often we are preoccupied with this fear of failure and how it may be perceived by others. And I'm a big believer that success and failure can often be a matter of personal perspective. And that one person's success may be another person's failure and vice versa. And it's really important to be aware of that it can sometimes be personal perspective. And we're going to put that to the test in a moment with a thought experiment. But just to give an example, a very brief example, I'm a keen runner. And one of the milestones I want to achieve is to run 5 kilometers in under 20 minutes. I was close back in 2015. Then I got various injuries, life got in the way, la-di-da-di-da. And at the moment, I could probably run it in about 21 minutes, 30. But I'm adamant that one day I will get down to 20 if I put in the hard work. And if I do, I'll be incredibly proud because it will be a lifetime best for me. However, there could well be people on this call now where running the 5 kilometers in 20 minutes is a bad day for them. They could do it in 19 or 18 or 17 or 16 or 15 minutes. There could well be people on this call where the very idea of running 5 kilometers feels completely insurmountable. And a more realistic goal might be 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. The key thing is, in that example, every one of those goals has equal merits, whether it's running 5 kilometers in 20 minutes, running it in 15, or just getting out the door for your very first run ever. Every one of those has equal merits because the objective, the outcome is very personal to us. And it's important that we do not get despondent when we encounter setbacks, and we're cognizant that sometimes success and failure isn't black and white. There is a fine balance between success and failure, and it can be a matter of personal perspective. So to put that to the test, we're going to do a thought experiment. And this is where we use Menti, and I'll give you the details in a moment, but let me set the scene. So imagine you are studying towards your BA diploma or your advanced BA diploma or any other certification that is appropriate to you. And you're studying one particular module. The module you are studying is a subject matter that you find particularly difficult and challenging. So maybe it's data analytics, maybe it's requirements engineering, maybe it's business finance, maybe it's any module you can think of. But think of a subject matter that you find difficult and challenging. However, you learn lots during the course of your studies. You learn new tools, you learn new techniques, and you get a newfound confidence in this subject matter. However, and here's the kicker, upon taking the exam, you fall short by a single mark of the required pass mark, okay? So to recap, you're studying towards a professional certification. This particular module is difficult very challenging for you. However, you learn lots, new tools, new techniques, newfound confidence. But when you take the exam, you fall short by one single mark. My question to you is, with the information presented and with a very deliberate binary choice, do you consider that scenario to be a failure or a success? So this is where we're going to put the technology to a test again. If you want to go to Mentees, you can either scan the QR code or go to menti.com and punch in the code at the top. You should be presented with a choice. It's completely anonymous. There is no right or wrong. Again, it'll be capped at 50, so apologies if you can't partake. I want you to tell me if you consider that scenario to be a failure or a success. Right, that is incredibly close. Wow, there's one more person, I believe. We've got what space for? Wow. Okay, so if there is a, oh, there's not a 50 cap. I'm going to give it 10 more seconds. Right. That is incredibly close. So I've done this numerous times now, and I've seen it close. I've never seen it that close before. Typically, failure comes out on top, and the margin of difference can vary, but that's incredibly close. And I would say that is really, I've never seen it that close, actually. I'm a little bit, but it's incredible because I think what that really shows is that success and failure is personal to each of us. And clearly, we have a 50-50 split there, which I think is pretty incredible. Now, to just build on that, I was a little bit cheeky there. I was a little bit mischievous because I suggested that was maybe a hypothetical situation. But actually, it's not. It's based on a real-world experience, specifically mine. So I'm working towards my advanced BA diploma. And in March last year, I sat the business finance exam and I failed. I got 25 out of 40 and the pass mark is 26. So I failed by one single mark. I went back again on November the 30th. I took the exam, I studied hard, I put in the hours, and I failed again by one single mark. I got 25 out of 26. To say I was dejected would be an understatement. But I went back again. I went back on the 14th of December, 2 weeks later, and I passed by 3 marks. And I think it's a really important message to say that failure is a transition state. It is only the end state if you allow it to be. So admittedly, when I failed in March, I was a bit disappointed. When I failed in November, I was bitterly disappointed because I put in the work and I was sure that I was going to pass. And I very nearly didn't go back. I was pretty adamant I wasn't going to put myself through it for a third time. But what I realized was I was making excuses. I was telling myself I'd hit a ceiling in terms of how much I could learn on this subject, when actually I was lying to myself. There was a particular subject or a particular section of business finance to do with net present values, weighted cost of capital, etc., that I just simply couldn't get my head around. And I knew that if I could crack that, I'd have a good chance of passing. So that's what I did. So after a couple of hours or a couple of days, sorry, of sort of feeling sorry for myself, I focused on that gap and I went back and I passed with some marks to spare. So it's really important to say that setbacks, adversity, failure doesn't have to be the end state. It's only the end state if you allow it to be. But we've spoken a bit then about fears. But to face our fears means we have to recognize that we're presented with a situation that makes us fearful, and we need courage, we need bravery to overcome it. So what I'd like us to do is make a word cloud about what being brave means to us. So as soon as I turn it on, if you want to go to Menti, if memory serves me correct, you'll have an option of 5 text boxes. I think there's a character limit on each of those of 25. Use as little or as much as you want. You don't have to use them all, but I just want you to tell me what being brave means to you, and we'll create a word cloud together. So you should now find that is open. So again, use as little or as much as you want. Hit submit when you've defined what being brave means to you, and we'll make a word cloud. I love these words. I love perseverance. I have to admit, perseverance is one of my favorites. That perseverance to keep going, confidence, perseverance, determination, mentally strong, stoicism. I like stoicism, pushing myself, resilient, outside comfort zone, moving forwards. Brilliant. We'll give it another sort of 10, 15 seconds to settle down, but it's great to see some of these words. Do it despite fear, pushing myself, not giving up, fighter, unfiltered, determined. What I'll do, I'll take after this, I'll kind of share this on LinkedIn for anybody that's interested. But clearly some very sort of powerful, emotive words coming there about needing strength and courage and confidence, not being afraid of fear, doing it anyway, taking action, etc. So if you haven't filled it out, please do so, but we'll move on now. But I'll share this afterwards. But clearly, a lot of really powerful words there. And I've got a couple of definitions of courage that I want to share with you. Two that really resonate with me. The first one is this idea of being courageous, confident, and ready to take risks. And the reason I always choose this image, I like this image. It's a very visual representation of that definition of being courageous. So for anybody that doesn't know who this is, and this is a gentleman called Alex Honnold. Alex Honnold is the world's greatest free solo climber. He climbs these incredibly technical, incredibly difficult cliff faces or walls, as they're called. But he does it without any harness, without any safety nets, without any equipment at all. It is him and his chalk bag. So a single mistake, and that is it. It is game over. There is no coming back from that. So for me, this is a very visual representation of courage and confidence and ready to take risks. However, what does any of that have to do with business analysis? Well, this definition for me is about the everyday bravery. So this is another definition about being brave, which is being imaginative in our thought or our expressions. And this is the everyday bravery. And this could be something as simple as somebody putting their hand up to ask a question in a meeting or in a busy environment. It could be somebody offering a different way of working, a different opinion that is counter somebody else's or is against the norm. And for me, it's this everyday bravery as business analysts. It's incredibly important. We need to be brave in our roles. We need to try new tools and new techniques and new approaches. And I'm a big believer that whether it's as a colleague, as a line manager, as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader, we have to create an environment where we can be brave, where we can try new tools and new techniques and new ways of working and offer different opinions without fear of repercussion. So this everyday bravery, I think, is incredibly important. And what I'm going to do shortly is I'm going to share my 6-month comfort zone challenge, some of the things that I did outside of my comfort zone. But before I do, I want to explore this idea that comfort zones are very different and they're very unique to each of us. And we're going to do that by individually and collectively ranking these 5 things on the screen in order of how close and how far they are from our comfort zone. So I'll start the Menti in a moment, but just to set the scene, ignore the order that they're in at the moment. There is a tandem skydive. There is presenting at a conference. There is introducing yourself to somebody at a networking event. There is performing karaoke in front of a live audience. And then there is deleting 1,000 emails without reading them. Okay, so tandem skydive, presenting at a conference, introducing yourself to somebody at a networking event, performing karaoke in front of a live audience, and deleting 1,000 unread emails. Now, what I want you to do is, number 1, the thing that makes you, I guess, for a better lack of a word, most scared, most afraid would be number 1. And the thing you're most comfortable with would be number 5. So if the thing on this list that you would worry you the most is karaoke, that would be number 1. And if the thing that you're most comfortable with is skydive, that would be number 5, and then everything in between. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to open up the poll now. Again, completely anonymous, no right or wrong. But let's see where everybody's comfort zones are. There we go. I was getting a bit nervous then. It wasn't working. Okay. Skydive seems to be way out in front, but there's a little bit of movement with everything below. Still moving. Right, we'll give it about another 20 seconds or so. So remember, number 1 is the thing that you would be most fearful of. Number 5 is the thing that you're most comfortable with. Right, so it looks pretty settled now. So I'll continue to talk, but if you've not submitted your answers yet, please do, because you never know, it may change. So we've got tandem skydive number 1, presenting at a conference number 2, karaoke number 3, deleting 1,000 unread emails number 4, and introducing yourself. Collectively, this audience is most comfortable with is introducing yourself at a networking event. Now, I don't know if this is going to work. This idea has literally popped into my head because I never tried it on a session like this. But if your top 5, if your sequence looks roughly like this, not exactly, but a close approximation, use some emojis just to indicate it to everybody else. Okay, so we've got some thumbs up claps, right? So for some people, this list is a close fit and is a close match. Right, if we stop the emojis. Now, what I want to ask is if yours is almost the complete opposite, or looks nothing like this, then use an emoji to let everybody know. Okay, brilliant. So what this shows is, so as a collective, the thing that we are most worried about is a tandem skydive. However, just judging by the emojis to those 2 questions, clearly people's individual comfort zones are very, very different. And there may be some people here who would absolutely love nothing more than go and do a tandem skydive. And the thing that might terrify them the most is going to talk to somebody at a networking event. So just to give a bit of context, so before I talk about my comfort zone challenge, I think it's worth giving some context around where my comfort zone is to set the scene, really. So of these 5, when I did this, when I ordered these originally, the thing that I would be most scared of is karaoke. So karaoke, for anybody that knows me, has been this on-running joke of something I would absolutely love to do, but was absolutely terrified of it. I just couldn't get over that sort of social anxiety, that social fear. So for me, at the time, karaoke would absolutely have been number 1. Number 2, introducing myself to somebody I don't know at a networking event. So I like people, I love having conversations, but I'm not very good at the social interactions, and introducing myself to somebody I don't know is very alien to me. So that would be my number 2. Number 3 would be presenting at the conference. So yes, I had those fears and those worries leading up to the conference and any time that I present, but I'm a big believer if I practice and I know my material, then I have the confidence to take into that session. So that would be number 3 for me. Number 4 would be a tandem skydive. So I've skydived, I've bungeed, I've white wall raft, I've abseiled, I've bridge swung. Basically, if it involves adrenaline, if it involves dopamine, I will typically run towards it rather than run away from it. So tandem skydive for me would be number 4. And the thing that I would be most comfortable with would be deleting 1,000 unread emails, which I've done numerous times. And this may scare some people, it may not, but my current inbox has 2,600 unread emails. And I intend to delete those very, very soon. So that's something I'm incredibly comfortable with. But there is some context to that. So don't worry, I don't just blase delete emails. So this is what I'm going to talk now about my comfort zone challenge. So I'm going to share 29 things that I did over the course of 6 months. Now, I want to say right off the top, I'm not going to bore you to death and go line by line on 29 items. I've got some pretty tight animation that will keep me focused. There are hyperlinks to some of these things that I've written about previously. If anybody wants to know more about any of these specifically, then we can look at that in the Q&A. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, etc., etc. But I want to give you a whistle-stop tour of 29 of the things that I did as part of my comfort zone challenge. So, no particular order. Here we go. So, number one, I was a guest on the BA Brew podcast to talk about my experiences in neurodiversity. Number two, I spent a day volunteering with some colleagues from IT. Number three, after 25 years, I went completely cold turkey and gave up on all forms of caffeine. Number four, in April last year, I decided to run a marathon on very short notice to see if I could. Number five, I launched a personal blog called the Alternative BA Blog in May, I think it was, last year. Number six, I went for a pub lunch with a colleague, which for me is very much stepping outside of my comfort zone. Number seven, I attended a number of virtual career workouts where I get asked lots of questions by school students of various ages. Number eight, I asked a question of a very senior person where I expected the answer to be no. Actually turned out to be yes, which was lesson in itself. Number nine, I've learned to be my authentic self regarding ADHD, so I don't mask it anymore. I embrace it and I talk quite openly about it. Number 10, I gave colleagues a video tour of my home office just to give them a little insight into what my life is like at home. Number 11, I deleted 1,000+ unread emails, as I mentioned. Number 12, I went on safari in our business. I went and spent time in our contact center, in our restaurants, and our hotel to better understand our frontline team. Number 13, I cycled 100 kilometers to try and average an average pace of 30 kilometers per hour to really push myself. Number 14, I helped my somewhat reluctant son summit Snowdon last year. Number 15, for the very first time in the lead up to the conference, I presented to an external audience for the very first time. Number 16, I confronted a neighbor about behavior that I considered to be unacceptable. Number 17, I said no to some opportunities on matters of personal principle that I otherwise really wanted to do. Number 18, I tried lots of new different tools and techniques in workshops just to try and kind of spice things up. Number 19, this is really fun, this one. I connected with other Simon Platts on LinkedIn, which is really, really interesting. Number 20, I applied for and was a finalist in the Business Analyst of the Year 2023 awards. Number 21, I delegated an outcome that was really, really important to me, but I delegated it to somebody else. I let go of it and delegated it to somebody else. Number 22, I completed a 87-kilometer hike in 24 hours as part of a charity event. Number 23, I wrote a piece around my BA career for something called the BA Story. Number 24, I was a guest for the very first time on a webinar for the IIBA UK. Number 25, I presented at the BA conference. So these were I guess, some of the successes that I'd had in stepping outside my comfort zone. And some of these were further outside of my comfort zone than others. But again, that's only part of the story. So success is great, but there are a number of things that actually I couldn't bring myself to do during my comfort zone challenge that I wanted to do. So it may sound silly, but I couldn't bring myself to attend a project launch lunch. So we launched a new ServiceNow offering, and we had a celebration lunch with suppliers and customers, etc., etc. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't bring myself to be in that sort of social environment. And as much as I tried, it was just too difficult for me. So although I wanted to do it, I wanted to sort of expand my social networks, shall we say, just a bit too difficult for me. In a similar vein, I went to the BA Managers Forum last year, and I went there with a very specific intention of introducing myself to strangers. So like one of the options that we had on the previous Menti poll, I went there with every intention of saying, right, I'm going to introduce myself to 3 people I do not know. Couldn't do it. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I had lots of really good conversations. I got to meet lots of people, but they were typically initiated by somebody else. The idea of me walking up to somebody and saying, hi, my name's Simon, and starting a conversation was too difficult for me at the time, and that's something that I'm still working on. In a similar vein, I had every intention of going to an after-work social. I haven't been to an after-work social in 6+ years, for various reasons. And again, it's something I want to do because after time, you don't get asked anymore. And but I just couldn't do it. I just kept finding excuses not to go. So again, that's something I'm working on. And then last but not least is the karaoke. So at the time that I did this presentation, I hadn't done karaoke. Although I'm pleased to say that I have subsequently did it. On the second day of the BA conference, there happened to be an after party that involved karaoke. So between riding the high of presenting, a few shandies, shall we say, and being in a safe environment, I finally did it, and it was incredible. I don't mind admitting it was an incredible 3 minutes. It was everything I thought it was going to be, and none of the fears that I had were realised. So yeah, I've been able to chalk that one off the list. But we're almost there. There's the so what question. So we are business analysts. So all of that is great, but so what? We measure things in value, we measure things in outcome. So this is what all of those things meant to me in terms of my journey of personal growth and discovery. This is what I learned from putting myself outside of my comfort zone. The first one is I learned to embrace my authentic self. So as I mentioned, I have ADHD. I'm also a parent to an autistic child. And that is not something I could have said out loud once upon a time, but I come to embrace it, and I've come to become very passionate about neurodiversity, about neuroinclusivity, and I don't feel the need to mask anymore. And I feel the need to kind of help promote that and raise awareness and be part of that conversation. And one way I did that was being a guest on the BA Brew in February, or I think it was March last year, which at the time was easily the scariest thing that I've ever done. To talk in an open forum, you know, on a podcast that's going to be published on YouTube, etc., about my experience in neurodiversity was incredibly scary, but equally probably one of the most personally rewarding things that I've ever done. So I've learned to embrace my authentic self, and I don't mask the fact that I have ADHD. The other thing that I've come to learn, or relearn specifically, is the power and the value of community. So as you can probably infer, I'm a bit of an introvert. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy other company. It just means I'm in very, very comfortable being in my own headspace. I can energize myself very, very easily. But by sort of putting myself out there, I've come to realize just how incredible the BA community is. So whether that's things like the BA Managers Forum, whether it's attending the IIBA UK Brown Bags, or even as simple as going for a pub lunch with a colleague, which for me is absolutely outside my comfort zone because there's a degree of intimacy that I'm not always comfortable with, and it crosses that line between personal and professional. But I've come to realize just how incredible people are, and how incredible the BA community especially is. And for that, I'm sort of very, very grateful. It's also increased my mental resilience. So some people say to me, what has running a marathon got to do with work? What has cycling 100 kilometers got to do with work? What has going on a caffeine detox got to do with work? And my answer is always the same. It's increased my mental resilience. Every single physical endurance endeavor I've ever done, without fail, I've wanted to quit. And sometimes I have quit. It's too hard, it's too difficult, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm tired, I'm in pain. But actually, when you overcome those, sometimes the reward is greater because of the adversity. And I built up a mental resilience so that when I go into the workplace, I carry that with me. As a business analyst, I'm more resilient, and it's made me a better business analyst because of it. Fourth one is facing up to imposter syndrome. So for context, I'm confident in my abilities, but that doesn't mean I don't set a very high bar on what I expect from myself. And in the past, that leads to imposter syndrome. Why do people want to listen to me? Why do people, you know, what value does my particular viewpoint or opinion have? But as part of my comfort zone challenge, I basically said to hell with it. I just ignored it. I had to just shut it out. And on the back of that, I applied for and was successful as a Business Analyst of the Year finalist. I have done a previous webinar. I wrote a blog that people have engaged with. I was asked to present at the conference, which went down pretty well. So none of these would have happened if I'd have listened to that little voice in my head telling me otherwise. But I just said to hell with it. I'm just going to do it anyway and just sort of embrace it. And then last but not least, when I came up with this presentation, the title "Fear Kills More Dreams Than Failure Ever Will Do." If I'm honest, it was a catchy, snappy, headline title. But actually, I've come to realize it is so true. So every one of those black dots, every one of those sort of activities that I took on outside my comfort zone, every one of them came with an element of fear, some more than others. But I've come to realize none of that fear came to fruition. Yes, I was a bit nervous with some of them. Yes, some of them made me feel uncomfortable. But actually, that catastrophizing, that what's the worst that can happen, never came to fruition. What came to fruition instead was just a sense of accomplishment, a sense of personal reward and satisfaction from doing something that made me uncomfortable. And in this very last slide here, if I was to kind of leave you with 7 takeaways, it sounds obvious, but get comfortable being uncomfortable. The more you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, the more you find you get comfortable doing it. It becomes almost a sense of gamification. So just try it. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. As I mentioned earlier on about, recognize and celebrate colleagues that face their fears. And I don't necessarily mean get out party poppers and the balloons, but if you recognize that a colleague has done something outside of their comfort zone, and it could be as simple as putting a hand up to ask a question or offer a different way of working, etc. Like, recognize that. I speak from personal experience. You do not know how far sometimes that can go, how much confidence you can give that person and reinforcing it. So recognize and celebrate colleagues that face their fears. It's a cliche, but it is okay to start small. I'm not advocating that, that everybody runs out and does a 6-month comfort zone challenge. Start small, because the first step sometimes is the hardest. If at first you don't succeed, try again. I gave the example of my business finance exam. You're not always going to have success first time, but dust yourself off and go again, because failure isn't the end state. Don't wait for permission. So if there's something you want to do, don't wait for permission. And I'd even go so far as say, don't ask for permission. Trust your judgment. If you're asking other people for permission to do something, what you're probably hoping for is they're going to turn around and say no and not give you that permission because you don't want to do it. So trust your judgment. If there's something you want to do, trust your judgment. If it feels right, then do it. Don't necessarily ask or wait for permission. Have fun with it. I had so much fun doing that comfort zone challenge. Like, have fun with it. It shouldn't be a chore. Have fun with it. Enjoy it. Appreciate the wins, etc. And there's no time like the present. So there really isn't. So again, procrastination is often a sign that you are putting something off because you're worried about it, or you're scared about it, or nervous about it. Just go for it. There's no time like the present. And with that, thank you very much. I'm done. Back to you, Adrian.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Simon, for a truly inspirational session. We have got some Q&A, and we'll cover as many questions and answers as we can. Do stay on the line. Often people say that the questions and answers are just as interesting as the session itself. And also, I've got a few announcements at the very, very end, so do stay for as long as you can. But there's some people saying lovely stuff in the chat. Glenn says, inspirational, Simon, thank you. We've got Tim saying, Simon, this is great stuff. You've had an amazing year. Rishma saying you're very inspirational. So do take a look at the other chat. There's some lovely stuff in there. But I am going to go through as many of the questions as we can in the time we have left. So we will start with Jennifer. And Jennifer asks a really interesting question, in fact. Jennifer says, does psychological safety affect whether you face the fear and take the risk? So, i.e., if I feel safe in my comfort zone, am I more apt to lean in and take a chance to do the thing I fear? So I suppose, interpreting what Jennifer's saying there, I think what she's saying is if you're like, if you've got safety where you are, does that mean you're more likely to stretch that comfort zone and go beyond it? What do you think, Simon?
I think so. I think so. So if I give an example, let me give an example. I won't name the company, but I worked in an organization where I wasn't being true to myself. There were things that I wanted to do. There were ideas that I had. There were ways of working, but effectively, I was conforming to what was expected of me. So I wasn't being particularly brave in terms of my ideas and my expression, etc. And then we had a change of leadership, and with that change of leadership came a change of culture, and that culture became more conducive to how I wanted to work, not just me, but other people. And then suddenly I was like braver, because I saw, the best way I can describe it is I saw leaders demonstrating the cultures that I believed in through their actions, through their words. And it gave me the confidence, the empowerment to say, actually, if it's okay for them to do it, it's okay for me to do it, if that makes sense. So I think, yes, I think psychological safety is a massive part of it, because in my career, I have been a square peg in a square hole because I wanted to conform. But then I've seen it where the leadership or the culture is right, and then me and others can flourish because we're not afraid of repercussions, we're not afraid of doing different ways of working, etc. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think yes, I think it takes even more courage to really step outside your comfort zone in an environment where maybe you don't feel you've got that psychological safety.
Yeah.
Um, I would I would applaud it. I try to do that regardless. But yeah, it definitely takes a lot more courage, I would suspect. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Thanks, Simon. And as you were speaking there, I was thinking about how, if I understood you correctly, you're almost describing how the importance of role modeling is.
Right.
So you had some role models who perhaps inspired you or enabled you or created space for, and that made me think that it's sort of interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes, like, you're almost certainly a role model to people who are listening in now. Sometimes you can be a role model without realizing it, and it's probably important for us all to realize that there might be a junior BA who looks to us as a role model who we never even think, because we tend to be quite humble as BAs, don't we? Never think so. Excellent. So next question is from Rushma. And Rushma says, as a BA working largely from home, how have your fears changed working as a BA? So do you think fears change when you're perhaps more home-based than office-based?
Did my fears? Yeah, I think so. An example is I facilitated. Well, I'm trying to think of a good example here. So yeah, so I think, for example, I gave the example of like how workshops, the very first time I ever did a workshop, I was terrified of it. I actually, pre-pandemic, love workshops. I love in-person facilitation, love in-person workshops. Much prefer it to hybrid, etc. I think you just get much better dynamics. But actually, I think working from home more, I find that those skills have got a little bit rusty. And maybe I'm not quite as brave as I would have been in the past to do stuff because um, sometimes when I facilitate workshops, I like to have a bit of energy. I like to get other people to take responsibility for the pens and the post-its to get them moving. And I think for some people, that might be an alien to them pre-pandemic, and it's even more alien to them now post-pandemic because everything's hybrid. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah.
I certainly find challenges in terms of how I might facilitate or run workshops, in person versus from home. And I'm not as braver online, if I'm honest, because you can't read the audience. It's very difficult to be brave on an online workshop or a meeting because you
That's
can
it.
see people. Yeah.
That's really interesting, and what that sort of strikes me is that perhaps there's an element of use it or lose it with this stuff, where actually if you might be, or you or I or anyone might be brave in a particular context, but then if you don't use that skill set for 2 years, perhaps the fear has a habit of coming back, doesn't it? So it's about flexing those muscles, perhaps. Um, so Lizzle asks, oh, these are all really great questions. What prompted this journey for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So originally when I submitted to speak for the conference, I didn't have the idea of a comfort zone challenge. I had this idea about being brave. And I like to think that I've been brave, and my daughter certainly has been a muse for me in that respect, in terms of being a bit brave and a bit bolder. And then when I got accepted, that imposter syndrome kicked in. Like, if I'm going to talk to people about being brave and bold, do I really have enough real world experience? I was like, okay, I need to earn it. I need to earn the audience's I'm not sure what the word is, but I need to earn it. If they're going to turn up, I need to earn it. And that's was like, well, how can I do that? I was like, I know, I'm going to push myself. I'm going to very deliberately do an experiment, a case study on myself, and push myself. So that's where the idea came from. I always had the idea about being a braver BA as a concept, but then when I was accepted, it's like, right, I need to earn this. I need to be able to stand up and talk with conviction and authority from real world experience, and that's where the comfort zone challenge came from.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we're going to move on to quick fire questions now, Simon, which is where I'm going to put you under time pressure
Okay.
and try and get through as many as we can. So, um, Next question is from Mac. And Mac suggests that ADHD may potentially have hampered you in some things, but has it also helped you with some of your challenges in ways that meant your approach may have differed from other people's?
Short answer is yes, probably, because characteristics of ADHD can be impulsivity, being in the moment, this concept of time of being now versus not now, etc. So yeah, I do think there are certain aspects of it that are constraints, certainly the social interaction, etc., etc. But then just going for it, not second guessing myself, just going for it, I think absolutely I would suspect is a positive side of the ADHD. Yeah.
Fantastic. Christina asks, did you have external help to, to cause all these changes in yourself? And or who supported you in this transformative journey?
No and no. So basically, again, I'm very self-driven, very self-motivated. I kind of shared the idea with other people originally, but I just felt this is my journey and I'm just going to go for it. And again, I think it's some of that same impulsivity. If I had an idea, I could just act on it in the moment or very quickly. I just went with it. So no, it was very much just me going for it. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have an anonymous question. Again, and these are all really, really interesting questions. Do challenges get easier or just different?
Oh, that's a good one. I think both.
Yes.
I think both. I think the more I stepped out of my comfort zone, the easier it got. And ironically, someone asked me this the other day, if you took that radar I had, if I was to, ironically, you could say I could re-baseline it today and every one of those activities would now be in my comfort zone challenge. Like having done karaoke, I'd love it. I would do it. The next opportunity I had, I would do it as a drop of a hat. So I think the more I did, the more my comfort zone expanded, the more I realized what's the worst that's going to happen. And then it just became trying to pick different flavors to try and keep me motivated and try new things.
Fantastic, fantastic. The next question, the person has submitted their name, but just due to the nature of the question, I'm not going to say who this is from because they might not have known I was going to say their name. So this anonymous asker says, what would your advice be if the fear is not coming from a place of self-limitation, but a past history of trauma, which the colleague isn't necessarily aware of, either caused by, say, school bullying, parents who would put you down from an early age as opposed to encourage, which it's a really, really tricky and broad question, but a very, very
Yeah.
important one.
So I'm going to try and handle that sensibly, and I can only talk from my experience, right? So I'm talking from me. So do I come from a background of trauma? Possibly. Single parent dad, mum's not been on the scene since I was very young. Being told my daughter is autistic at the age of 2, incredibly challenging, etc., etc., etc. So do I have some trauma in my life? To some extent, less than others, more than some. Has it made a difference? Possibly, possibly. My daughter, for example, is absolutely my muse. She's autistic. I take incredible inspiration from her. So I don't know how else to answer that, but yeah, I don't want to sort of step outside of my bounds. But for me, it's made me who I am, and to some extent pushes me and inspires me to try and be the best version of me that I can be.
And fantastic, fantastic. And we've probably got time for one last question, and then I've got some closing messages. So do stay on the line, everyone, just for a couple more minutes. But final question is from Michelle, which is for the things you couldn't bring yourself to do, for example, introducing yourself at a networking event. Do you still intend to work on them, or are they sort of lines you won't cross?
No, I still work on. There's no line I won't cross. So I have a very simple rule, which is do I want to do the thing? Can I do it? And then will I do it? And that falls into the do I want to do it? Yes, I want to do it. Can I do it? Yes, I can. Just got to go out there and do it. So no, there's no real, as long as I want to do the thing and I know that it will help me grow and develop, there are no red lines for me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Simon. I think a definite virtual round of applause for a really inspiring and interesting presentation. Apologies to the 8 or 9 people whose questions we haven't been able to get to, but how's the best way for people to connect with you? Would LinkedIn, like if someone wants to follow up on LinkedIn, are you happy for them to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn's absolutely fine. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. Yeah, just come find me on there.
Fantastic. Well, excellent. Thanks once again. Just before everyone goes, just a few closing messages. So if you are a regular viewer of these webinars, you'll be familiar with the fact that they are roughly monthly, there or thereabouts. But just to put a quick link in the chat to the next webinar, again, we have a webinar entitled, So Are You a Product Thinker? With an excellent speaker, Anna, who's fantastic. That's February the 21st, so in about a month's time, you can click through and register right away, should you want to do that. The other thing I just want to show you, which probably a bunch of you will be aware of already, is that there is a free quarterly magazine for BAs, which I am very pleased to be involved with. So I'm just going to share my screen very briefly. So you should be seeing BA Digest on there now, and this is you don't even have to register, right? It's completely free. It's 60 plus pages of BA stuff. And it is completely open access. So you can view all the archives, you can search the archives, and it is designed for anyone to be able to submit an article. In fact, you don't even have to submit an article. You can submit an idea, and then we'll give you feedback on whether that's the sort of thing that would work, and if it's acceptable, we'll let you know the deadlines. And the design is, we do the design works. You don't need to worry about the graphics, and also we do proofreading, copy editing, and that sort of thing. So all that's left for me to say is a massive thank you to Simon. I've seen the presentation twice now, and it gets better every time. I get something from it different, something different from it each time. So thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in live or indeed watching the recording. So take care, everyone. Stay safe. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.